Hello, today I'm going to talk about my book. The book that I choose is called Listen for the Whippoorwill, written by Harriet Tubman. First of all, I would like to say that I chose this book because of the name, because it has a really strange name. Because when I see the word whippoorwill, I didn't know what it means, but you will know it in a while. Well, the story, I think this book is very emotional because it's very descriptive. You will even feel the pain of the main character because it says exactly everything what she had to pass through, and it's about slavery, so that makes it even worse. The story begins in the Powers Plantation, a place located in Maryland in the United States. And the Powers Plantation, it's a company that produces tobacco, cotton, beans, and that stuff. The main character of the story is Rosebud Jackson. She has a brother called Isaac. Her father is Abe, and her mother is Sarah Jackson. Well, basically the story is about this family that is a slave family, and because in this era it was a very complicated moment in the story of the world, because in the United States in that moment the government was about to allow some laws about slavery, so it was a very tragic time. The story is about this family. They are suffering a lot being under the orders of the Powers family because they have to work the entire day without rest. Rosebud and her mother and other friend of them work in a hot cabin cooking for the Powers family. They have to cook 3 times a day, and apart from that they have to clean the house and do a lot of things. The father of Rosebud is planting cotton and beans and other type of seeds, and her brother his work is to train the horses. Well, the story is very normal until one day when Rosebud's brother tried to escape in one of those horses because he was tired of living that horrors in that place. So he tried to escape, and Mr. Powers contracted a slave catcher. The next day, the slave catcher returns with Isaac tied to the horse and with big chains tied to his toes. And that day was very sad because the Jackson family knew that their son will be punished later. So Isaac was punished that night, and the Jackson family was very worried about it. So later that night, Rosebud went to the stable to see her brother, and she could see him tied to a post. She tried to feed him, but he was covered with blood, and he told her that he will be free. That was his phrase: "I'm gonna be free, and you will be there to see it." Well, Sarah, Rosebud's mother, was pregnant, and when she was about to have the baby, she couldn't have it because she was in an advanced age. So she lost her son Matthew, and the next day he was buried near to the creek, to the creek that Rosewood and her brother visited daily to see the stars. So the family was very sad and tired of life, of slavery life. And some days later, Rosewood's father tried to escape too, but this time, because the father was smarter than his son, he could do it. He could escape and the slave catcher couldn't find him. But before he goes, he told Rosewood that he will return for her with the whippoorwill sound. And in this moment we notice that the whippoorwill is the sound of a bird. So he told her that the whippoorwill sound will sound one time and then two times, and that will be the signal for her to go to the forest and wait for her father. So one night, in the middle of the night, the midnight, something woke her up, and it was the whippoorwill sound. She thought it was the sun, but the only thing that she could do was to grab some clothes, a little bit of food, and she went into the forest. But she doesn't found her father. She found a woman called Harriet Tubman, and she told her to follow her into the forest. So they started walking, and in that moment she saw another two persons, a big man and a woman with a baby. They were other slaves from other places, and Harriet was like the leader, and they told them to follow her. So they started walking. They walked like a lot of days into the forest without eating, without resting, without sleeping, nothing. But one day they arrived to a house, an American house of white people, and Rosewood was very scared because she thought they were bad people, but they were not. They were followers of the cause, and they were trying to help them to liberate them from slavery. So they feed them, and the next day they continued with their way. So one day, while they were walking across the forest, they hear at the distance a lot of dogs barking, so they thought they would be captured. So the only thing they could do was to get into the water, into a swamp, to hit their others. And it works because the dogs couldn't found them, but it was a big price because they had to be into the swamp like for 2 days. And when they get out of the swamp, they were very tired, even more tired than before. One day, while Rosewood was resting in the soil, in the grass, a white boy saw Rosewood and talked to her, and she was scared too. She was scared of white people, but he was the son of Benjamin Woodhouse, who was a man with a funny hat, who was a friend of Harriet, and he was the man who wanted to help them. And they went to their house near to the city, and the family of Benjamin fed them, and the next day they were ready to continue walking to the city, to liberty. But Rosewood couldn't continue because Benjamin's wife noticed that she was very sick. She had fever and a throat infection. she had to spend the day in their house. So she stood there, and it was like a dream for her because it was the first time she was sleeping in a real bed and not in straw. So Rosebud wanted to continue her way to the city because she wanted to find her friends again, Harriet and the other two people, because maybe she was happy in that house with a lot of things that she had never had, but she doesn't feel comfortable in that place because Harriet was the person who saved her. And some days later, Benjamin told his son Isaac, who had the same name as Rosebud's brother, and told him to carry Rosebud to the city, but they had to hit her in the middle of the wooden boards of a horse cart, because in some cities there were a lot of authorities and the slave catchers and a lot of vigilance, because everybody in the city knows that Harriet Tubman was on her way with slaves, because she was well known in the cities because she was always helping slaves. So she was loved by some and hated by others some, but she was well known. So Isaac carried Rosebud to the city, and when they get to the city, they arrive to a shoe shop of a man called Thomas Garrett, who was the man that Harriet told Rosebud that he will help them. He was like a friend of her who has like the papers and all the documentation that they need to get to the city. Guess what? Harriet and the other two people were in that place waiting for her. So she was very excited and happy. And before she goes again, Isaac Woodhouse told her that if she wanted to start a new life of freedom, she had to start with everything new. So he gave her a new name, and her new name will be Rosalie. And he told her that she will be free, and that was his phrase: "My name is Rosalie and I'm free." So this man, Thomas Garrett, who was Harriet Tubman's friend and the owner of the shoe shop, gave them some new shoes, some food, and directions to continue with their way, because they wanted to continue walking. And the next day they finally get to the city, and it was the first time that Rosebud saw a black man with a tuxedo, wearing a tuxedo, because in the Powers plantation where she had to work, that was an impossible thing, because everybody was wearing old clothes and being punished daily, and that were all the memories she had, just horror and bad things. So they get to the city, and in the city, Harriet Tubman was a very important person. She was well known and she had a lot of contacts. So she got the necessary papers to go to Canada, because that was the main objective of Harriet, to take them to Canada, because in Canada in that moment there were any law against black people, and Canada was the symbol of freedom. Canada was, the meaning of Canada was freedom and liberty. So she got the necessary papers, the train tickets, and they get to the train, and the road to Canada was a new part, a new beginning in the life of Rosebud, because while she was going into the train, she could remember all the things she had to pass through. She remembered her mother, her brother, who was sent to work again, and she was imagining what happened with her father, who escaped a lot of time ago. And they finally arrived to a bridge, and they could see the Niagara Falls, and it was something really amazing for her, because she had never seen a waterfall. And when they arrived there, at the distance she could see a silhouette of a black man, and in that moment her eyes were full of tears, because it was her father. Her father stood like 1 month there, going to the bridge daily, waiting for her beloved daughter. And it happened. She could be together again, and the story finalized like that, with Rosebud finding her father. They were free. She told her that her new name was Rosalie, and they were free. And that's the final of the story. I think is very reflexive. Is even worse because it's based on a real story. Harriet Tubman existed, and it was a person who helped a lot of people to be free. And it's sad because it's just one of a lot of stories that happen, and we will never know about slavery and all the terrible things that happen in past eras. So it's very sad, and it gives me a lot of pity, but I think it's a very good book, and it's totally recommended by me. And thanks for watching.